Madam Chair, you are live.
Thank you so much. And it is 5 o'clock. We are going to call the November 2nd, 2022 Quality of Life Committee meeting to order. Elizabeth, can I please get a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Counselor Amanda Chavez.
Here.
Counselor Lee Garcia.
Here.
Counselor Michael Garcia.
Present.
Counselor Renee Villarreal. Present. Chair Cassett.
I'm here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff?
Changes from.
Changes from the committee? And if not, can I get a motion?
To approve.
Second.
And motion in a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries. Moving on to the consent agenda, the only item I have pulled is item C, which is the request for approval of a budget adjustment resolution to move funds from Fund 530. We don't have to read the caption right now. Item C is being pulled. We'll read about it later. Is there any other items that people would like to pull? We did not get any emails indicating so. Councilman Villarreal.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to pull the minutes to provide corrections.
Wonderful. So item A will be pulled. Nancy. And if that is it, can I get a motion to approve as amended?
Approve as amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Roll call, please. It's consent.
Counselor Amanda Chavez.
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Chair Cassett.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. And moving on to presentations, we have Consuelo's Place, exploring the role of non-congregate shelter beyond the pandemic. Director Kira Ochoa of Community Health and Safety Department is here, along with Julie Sanchez. I have Alexandra Ladd listed. I see guests. So take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm very happy to be standing here tonight to talk about this topic with you. As many of you know, when we stood up the shelter, the emergency shelter at Midtown in 2019, the intention was to prevent the spread of COVID in a population that has a really high risk, not only because they might be in congregate settings together, but because homeless folks tend to have higher rates of chronic disease, less access to sanitation. And the other intention was to prevent outbreaks of COVID in the general population, because we were concerned that, homeless folks couldn't isolate at home and would be using public spaces. I'm happy to report that I think we've had achieved both goals in standing up the Midtown shelter. 3 years in now, is that right? My math may be wrong, but a while in, it's all a blur with the pandemic, but we're finding, along with a lot of other communities in the United States, that non-congregate shelter is a really important part of the continuum in addressing and reducing homelessness. According to current studies by the Urban Institute and Berkeley's Tenor Center for Housing Innovation, we're finding that non-congregate shelter provides a really important additional option to people who would not normally use congregate or group shelter, which has allowed us to serve people that had not previously been reached, that people feel an increased sense of safety in this setting, and that it's also a really effective tool in increasing long-term housing placements, and the staff will talk about their experience with doing that at Consuelo's. Here's a quote from the housing, Federal Housing Authority, HUD. NCS, or non-congregate shelter programs, offer communities a head start in rapidly identifying a cohort of people at high risk for bad outcomes from infection and disease. They also create an ideal platform for streamlining the process of helping people find and move into housing that meets their needs. So not only are we finding that non-congregate housing plus really great services can provide a better protection from people against COVID, and it's unfortunately still an issue as COVID numbers are rising this season here in Santa Fe County. But we're also finding that, that it's a great part of the continuum beyond the pandemic. And we do have a lot of people out of doors still. Between July 1st and September 30th of this year, Lifelink served 104 people in those 3 months who report camping on the streets or out of doors. Our park rangers are finding they're serving about 15 people per week that are unduplicated. And we don't have great counts still, but we know there are a lot of people out there that need alternatives. So with that, I want to turn it over to Director of Affordable Housing, Alexandra Ladd. No, I'm not doing that. You're just here to be supportive and answer questions. I'm sorry, you guys. We're forgive me. We'll get to the good stuff right now, which is I'm really pleased to be able to introduce to you Heather Lavalley, the Executive Director of Consuelos Place, and Abdullah Chudnoff, who's the Deputy Director of Consuelos Place. And they have a short presentation, which because they're extremely busy doing great work, wasn't uploaded, but will be after the presentation. Thank you so much.
So yeah, we have a little presentation. This is the history of Consuelos Place. As Kira said, we were started as a shelter to help mitigate.
Sorry,
the-
can you just make sure that the mic is up? Because that's how we can make sure that the people watching on YouTube can hear you. So
Can you hear me now?
yes, that's better. Thank you.
So we did start out as a shelter to help mitigate the spread of COVID and other infectious diseases among the homeless population here in Santa Fe. There's also some services that we offer up there. So we obviously house people. We still do quarantine. We went from 24 quarantine apartments down to 4 though. So we have 8 quarantine beds right now. We often are short of quarantine beds because I know a lot of people think that the pandemic is over, but we still get a lot of requests for quarantine. Some of the other services we offer are intensive case management, care coordination, transportation coordination. We offer a little bit of financial assistance, like with car repairs for people that need to get to medical appointments or job interviews or work. We do provide dinner and snacks, which these are everybody that works at the shelter, obviously. These are our current and past funding providers. This is our general yearly budget. It's, not itemized or anything. Services delivered. So this week, we housed or sheltered 127 individual, like non-repeated, unique individuals, 21 families with 39 children. The average length of stay was 125 nights, which is, we aim to, or in the past, we have aimed to keep it to a 3-month stay. Because there is such a lack of affordable housing right now, we're ending up having to lengthen that stay at the shelter. So as of October 31st, we have 25 individuals that have transitioned into permanent housing. Recently, our board has voted to prioritize certain groups. These are the people that they feel would benefit most from non-congregate shelter, since it is such a rare commodity around here. So families with young children, community members over 55, LGBTQIA+ who would normally be at risk at a congregate shelter, veterans, and medical respite. So as of October 31st, these are the issues we've been seeing lately. The number of quarantine apartments has been reduced from 24 to 4, as I mentioned earlier. We try to help as many people as we can, but the rooms are limited. We only have 2 ADA compliant rooms, which has been a problem. Like recently, we've had a larger need for that. We do what we can, but most of the time when our rooms become available, we have upstairs, downstairs, so we have to really try to pick and choose where we put people. So these are some of our challenges and successes. So we're temporarily housed right now, which is one of our biggest problems. So as of, I think, June 30th of 2023, we probably won't be housed at the Midtown campus anymore. So that's of immediate concern. Also, as I said before, people are staying longer at the shelter because of lack of affordable housing right now. A lack of health literacy among the population that we serve makes quarantining sometimes a bit of a problem. People often wonder why they can't leave when they're in quarantine. And a lack of stable funding sources are our challenges. Successes are, we've housed about 20% of our people, which is above the national average of people getting housed out of shelters. I think I read somewhere it was about 10%. I think non-congregate shelter really provides a greater level of stability for our clients. It's like a more dignified way to shelter people, you know, especially if you have medical problems or you're in recovery or you've got PTSD or any kind of stuff like that. Having your own room to go to really makes a big difference in being able to stay sober or work out whatever it is you need to work out. It's a great place to stabilize. It's a really good bridge between like regular congregate shelter or living outside and being housed in the community. It's good practice, you know. Our shelter, and I would invite any of you who are interested to come check it out. We have a really great sense of community. Our residents are really neighborly and they really help each other out. It's a wonderful thing to witness, really. So we are currently looking for a permanent base of operations for Consuelo's Place. That's what's coming next. We're planning on implementing classes like parenting classes, and we're doing a rent readiness class with partners from the community to help our clients be more ready to integrate into the community. And we're looking to set up a day labor program also. These are things that are all in the works right now. This is a list of things we always need. Stuff like towels and pillows in particular are always in short demand, you know, that kind of stuff. This will be available online for everybody to look at if anybody's interested in helping out. And of course, volunteers are always welcome. These are a few quotes from people in the community. This in particular is the director of Casa Milagro. She calls it a congregate housing facility. She talks about how important it is to have these options in the community for you know, people who really need the opportunity to stabilize and stuff like that. And she said she hopes that there are more options like this available in the future. And this is a client who talked about how dangerous he felt congregate shelter was for him. He talks about how he felt unsafe enough that he couldn't sleep inside the shelter. He thought his stuff was going to get stolen, and he's seen people assaulted. And he talks about how congregate shelter helped him really stabilize and feel like he could go out and look for a job and, you know, maintain his hygiene and stuff like that. So these are all just quotes from people about non-congregate shelter. Safer, more dignified place for people to stabilize. Any questions?
Thank you so much. Members of the committee, any comments or questions at this time? Councilor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the thorough information. I really appreciate it. And more so, thank you for all the dedicated service you've provided to our community in a very desperate time during a pandemic, facing the increase in the unhoused. And so thank you.
Yeah.
The only question I have for you is, I think you mentioned that you're looking at transitioning out of the Midtown campus around June 2023. Have you started transition planning, what the next steps might look like?
We don't actually have a place to go yet, so we're still, you know, looking.
Okay. And I guess maybe that's a question for staff. If
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, that's a great question. The Santa Fe Housing Initiative, which is a you know, coordinated effort on the part of the city, the county, and Incorum and other foundations like the Santa Fe Community Foundation are all working together on a set of initiatives. And one of those is projects is to look for another location for non-congregate shelter. And so, you know, Ancorum's been a great partner in this. They have also been, you know, working on the Lamplighter project, but they're now prioritizing working with the city and the partners within Santa Fe Housing Initiative to locate potential other properties and look at shared service models and sustainable funding sources.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like things are in the work and I'll.
That is our number one priority right now. I mean, aside from sheltering people.
Awesome. And the follow-up question was, are we working with staff to get this addressed? And the answer is yes. So I'll leave it to you all to make magic happen, and hopefully come June that there will be a different home for y'all. And if there's not, do we have a potential plan B, maybe looking at other city properties? I'm just trying to figure out. It'll be June before we know it. So.
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, we're not going to put them out on the street. I just want to let everyone know that. But this was an emergency plan temporarily as we build development. And I think Director Ochoa talked about, there are some strategies in place now, and they hopefully will be done by the June timeframe. But there's a lot of action happening behind the scenes.
We're
Okay.
very grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you to staff for your attention to this. Really appreciate it. Again, all the best. Thank you for providing these critical services to some of the most in need in our community. That's all I got, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions, comments from members of the committee? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to you and your team for the work you do. I was thinking about congregate shelter and how folks that aren't experiencing homelessness wouldn't want to be in a congregate shelter atmosphere anyway, because it's disruptive either way. So I just think about that, that we shouldn't put people experiencing homelessness in that situation too. So I appreciate we have this space. Did you want to say more about that?
We don't require our people to leave during the day, which I think is a big help in deterring, you know, like people from hanging around on the sidewalks and stuff like that. You know, people who don't have any place to go during the day. So at a non-congregate shelter, or at least our non-congregate shelter, they don't have to leave during the day. They can stay at the shelter. So it helps with the neighbors.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And then I was thinking about other options. Is Lamplighter in project going to be a potential location for folks that are currently at Consuelo's place?
Madam Chair, Councilman Villarreal, there will be housing at the Lamplighter. So there are a number of people staying at the shelter who have housing vouchers, and they would be eligible for housing at a project like the Lamplighter. But because of the way that those units are allocated, which is through the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness Coordinated Entry System, which is very much as it should be.
Mhm.
You know, the people with the highest priority are given housing for if they have vouchers. There's no one-to-one guarantee that people from Consuelos will go into the Lamplighter. But yes, that is a hope and a possibility.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's it. Just appreciate the work you're doing and that we were able to utilize space on the Midtown campus. It's ironic because I remember when we first started conversations when I started on council about how a Midtown property should be used. And I had talked about utilizing the space for, I didn't call it non-congregate, but looking at it as another option for shelter, and everybody laughed at me like, you're crazy. How could you think that? Here we are. And so I think it's great that we were able to utilize that space. And hopefully we can find an even better space to support folks that are currently at Consuelo's place. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Anything else from members of the committee? I have a couple questions. How many total rooms do you have right now?
So because it is an older building, quite often we find that there are some infrastructure issues that will creep up. As it is right now, I believe we have 17 family rooms available, and I think we have 20 single individual rooms that are available.
Okay, so about 37 total rooms. And then as we're looking at relocation, if you were to have a larger space with more rooms, do you have the organizational capacity to take on more individuals?
Yeah, as a general, what we're finding right now is because it's a more stable population and because individuals have that opportunity for privacy. People really, I think, understand it, that it is an opportunity. We are very blessed with a great population at the shelter. We definitely could use an additional case manager, particularly a bilingual case manager. But I do believe that we have the capacity to increase our size.
Okay. I think that's, as long as we know that you're going to have to move, I think that that's, aspirational. We really shoot for the moon, and trying to find those larger locations, or would you be able to do multiple locations if, they cobble together something of that nature? I know that gets a little bit more challenging.
I think we can do it. We have kind of backup plans regarding that kind of stuff, depending on where we end up. So as long as we have adequate staff, I think it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, wonderful. Alexandra, did you have something to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add too that this work doesn't come for free. And we've been really lucky. We've had access to a lot of Recovery Act rescue plan funds. So we've been able to do this. My office has funded almost all of the operations at the shelter. This is not sustainable. So the governing body is going to need to make that funding and policy decision when the budget comes up. And I really encourage you to consider that because this model works. I mean, you saw this evidence, but we have really moved mountains here. And I think Heather was very modest. She has an amazing team. She's brought amazing talents. The previous director as well, city staff who set this up. I think to your point, Councilor Villarreal, we didn't think we could do it. We also didn't have any idea what a pandemic was all about. And so, this is a huge lesson learned. Like, this is actually a better way to do this than to shelter people the way we have in the past. So I'm just going to put that little plug in there for all of you to think about.
Always a good plug to put in with this audience whenever there are dollars needed. That is one of our core functions. And thank you for that point. I mean, I think that has been kind of a constant question I've had after the pandemic is, what do we take away? And this sounds like one of those things that, again, didn't think it was possible, didn't think it was something that maybe to look at, but really actually being forced into the situation with the pandemic of not being able to do the congregate has really showed not just the benefits for COVID, but overall. Another thing, this is kind of more of a comment, something to think about. You mentioned a lack of health literacy. Prior to moving back home, my very last job in San Diego was I was coordinating a program where we brought volunteer physicians into homeless shelters, low-income schools, affordable housing communities. But really, this population was actually really key for that. And the core focus really was focusing on families and on trauma. But it does bring up this kind of idea that we understand, COVID, not only is health literacy challenging in regular times, but COVID is something that is frequently changing. It is like nothing we've ever experienced before. And you mentioned Ancorum as a partner. I'm curious if there's been any overlap working with the hospitals in terms of bringing some of that education, that healthcare to the population, as we are going to continue to ebb and flow with this pandemic and moments of quarantine.
Madam Chair, great question. Early on, we did have the Department of Health nurses present, and I think some of that was done informally, certainly with the city staff that were from the libraries, from the Recreation Department, and our amazing Public Works Director, Regina Wheeler, who ran that shelter as the director. So that was happening at the beginning. And then Krista St. Vincent has been a really big fan of Consuelos because of the medical respite and the quarantine that's been possible. But we haven't really formally, correct me if I'm wrong, Heather and Ab, you can correct me. Oh, good. I love to be corrected when I'm wrong. Great.
Yeah, so we've been really fortunate with Krista St. Vincent's to be in close partnership with the HUGS program, the High Utilizer. And that's been absolutely fantastic. We do get a lot of individuals who would be at higher vulnerability if they were back on the street or in congregate shelter. So we do work closely with them to prioritize, again, that demographic that really needs it. We probably have one of their people over at the shelter at least once a week. They're a great resource both for the residents and for the staff whenever we do have health questions. I think it definitely has made a pretty strong and positive effect on people's understanding and awareness around infectious diseases in a group setting.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because, in public health, we frequently have this issue that the population that needs the programming the most are the hardest to reach. And of course, in the congregate shelters, the turnover just makes it really challenging to be doing some of this programming. Not that you don't have enough on your plate, but my brain, of course, goes to this kind of like, oh, wow, what an amazing opportunity to be doing some of these health education, health promotion, preventative health programming that is kind of the bread and butter of a lot of public health education that with a population that we normally lose and constantly have a hard time really doing some programming there. So just to throw that nugget out there for potentially in the future, if there might be some opportunity, I think it is another benefit of this type of model that we frequently don't see is where some of those kind of more traditional public health services might really fit in with a population that is so vulnerable and frequently needs it so much. Last question. So you mentioned that there are 161 people on the wait list. Where are those individuals right now? I'm sure it's a mix, but.
Yeah, so right now, I believe that the typical wait time for individuals who don't meet a prioritization category is about 4.5 months to enter shelter services.
Wow.
So it's a really long time, especially as we're getting into the colder months. About once a week, I generally try to follow up with as many of those individuals as I can just to ascertain where they are staying. Quite a number of people are utilizing congregate shelters. There are a number of individuals, though, who again have communicated that a congregate shelter is not a safe and appropriate place for them to be staying. Quite often we have individuals who are still camping out. If they have family members that they can stay with for the short term, they will. We get a lot of people who are sort of intermittently in and out with family members. The issue there with a lot of people is that it then puts that family member's housing at risk as well as they might face eviction. And so it's really not an optimal situation for them. Yeah, like I said, congregate shelters, camping out. Every once in a while, someone's really lucky and their crisis has been resolved, but that generally is pretty far and few in between.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's a really important point because one of the conversations that we've been, or kind of talking points that we've heard when we have been discussing some of these alternative models for working with the unhoused population. So whether it's the safe sleeping spaces that we've been discussing, is this conversation of, well, they don't want help. They don't want housing. They prefer to be camping. And so understanding that there actually are a number of individuals that are camping out on the wait list, really trying to get into Consuelos because the congregate shelters are just not going to work for them. I think that that's a really important narrative. It doesn't mean that there aren't individuals who maybe are camping and don't want to go somewhere, but that's not universally true. And I think that is really important for us to be hearing, as well as when we continue to have these conversations with the community, that is that's there as well. So thank you for sharing that. I don't believe that I have any other questions. Thank you for adding that list of needs. So for anyone in the public, and maybe that is something that we can somehow communicate out via other channels. I think that would be, especially with the holiday season, we know that there are a lot of people that they get very generous this time of year, which is wonderful. And so how we can really utilize that. So Kira and Rich and as we talk to the team of what might be some channels in the city, we can push that information out. And thank you to both of you and your teams for this work. As Councilors Garcia and Villarreal mentioned, this is crucial. This is hard. And it's also, You know, it's really emotionally hard when I was working with the homeless population in San Diego, and it can be a real drain on you as individuals. And so thank you, because I know it really takes a lot out of you. People don't get into this work unless they care, because we definitely don't do it for the money. So I know that it really is a career of passion. So thank you for that and for bringing that to our community.
Thank you.
We're just getting the computer. I was like, yes, Julie, whatever you would like to say anytime. So, Julie always has an open invitation to speak in my world. Okay, moving on to our consent calendar. Councilman Villarreal pulled our minutes from the October 19th Quality of Life Committee meeting. Councilman Villarreal, floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm waiting for it. Okay, there we go. I want to say it's a PrimeGov thing, but I'm not quite sure. If you go, hold on. At the last, let's see, page 9 out of 10. So we had items that the votes aren't matching with the item, and that's why I think it was PrimeGov. So item I, hold on, this vote. Okay, so page at the top of page 9, that vote, the motion that I moved and was seconded by Councilor Garcia to move the resolution forward with no recommendation. That should be the vote for the legislative session. And so item I doesn't have the right motion vote or the accurate one. And the one right below it is the accurate one. And then, or maybe it's J. Hold on a minute. See, maybe there's a duplicate in here. Okay, sorry. Item I is the driver's license suspension. So that one's right. So the vote for item J is above it versus below it. You see that?
Yes, so that I see it. So when you're reading it, it doesn't make sense.
Right,
Mhm.
and it doesn't show that we had a vote on J, or it's above it, I should say.
Okay. I'm also noticing that I'm not seeing Counselor Lee Garcia was present, and I'm only seeing one Counselor Garcia.
Hmm.
We need both of them. So Elizabeth, yes.
Madam Chair, yes, there were issues again with PrimeGov on this committee meeting, and I've been working with Jeff Norris on it. On Monday, he made changes to align to what it should have been, but there's still issues. So we are working back and forth to get it correct. And those are the exact issues, the members present and that particular vote. So hopefully by tomorrow, we should have it back together on as correct.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That being the case, I would recommend that we postpone voting on this, on approving these until our next meeting.
Should I make a motion? There's another one on there, but.
Yeah, call out the other one and then, yeah, that would
Okay.
be the motion.
So for the action item that was uniform traffic ordinance governing mufflers, there's no vote recorded on this action item.
Mm.
And we, I think, move forward without a recommendation, but the vote's not on there. So just to note that one.
Madam Chair, that's the other item, but that one's should be already fixed in the system. Are you looking at your system at the updated?
We are
version right now?
looking
The
at
current-
whatever version is in PrimeGov right now.
Right now, okay. I'll get with Mr. Norris on that tomorrow as well.
Okay, wonderful.
And I
Thank you
think
so
those are
much.
the only ones identified. And then the attendance of Councilor Lee Garcia should be added. So I would move to postpone these minutes until the next meeting.
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Can I please get a roll call?
Yes.
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Cassett,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. Moving on to item C, request for approval of a budget amendment resolution to move funds from Fund 350 Art 4 CIP to Fund 213 Art Admin in the amount of $514,230 to fund various arts and culture initiatives. Pauline Kamiyama is here to answer our questions. Pauline, I'll just let you, the reason we pulled this, there was a change made at finance. So Pauline is here to provide us that information about what has changed and provide guidance on precisely how we are voting on this tonight.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I need to lower that. So my
Yeah,
original.
we don't want to, we don't want it to hit you like last time. That was not good in our meeting.
Have it scooted back. Sorry. Okay.
The tacter, the microphone.
All right, Madam Chair, Quality of Life Committee members. For fiscal year 23, you all were generous and voted in our budget to allocate $514,230 to our budget. And so I need to, in order to expend that, I need to move from the revenue account into an expense account. My original request that I presented to the Finance Committee, and I apologize, it was out of order. But because there's only 2 governing body meetings for the end of the year, I needed to get this in.
Oh, it's a bar, so it actually, there's only legislation that has to go in order. So
Oh.
you're not out of order. You're right on time.
Good. So I had allocated a request to put 100,000 for chart because I knew that there was going to be recommendations and or things that departments could do, whether it's my department or other city departments that we can partner in. There was concern raised by the Finance Committee that the recommendations have not been made yet. And so I'm pulling the item out and it will stay in the revenue account until which time there has been some decisions that are made by the governing body and that we can leverage that 100,000 with the monies that were allocated in community engagement department for chart. And I'm also hoping to leverage that for any grant applications. And also, I don't know if you remember this or not, but the Santa Fe Community Foundation, we established a chart fund and that was seeded ages ago by the Thornburg Foundation of 10,000. And so that was meant to be a public-private partnership. And I'm hoping that we can then, once the recommendations are in place, use that to reactivate to get funding. So I'm looking at funding at different sources, but at least that we have funding and community engagement that we can leverage with funding from the AIPP money. And so I'm withdrawing that from the request and we'll come back to you all later on, hopefully early next year or spring. And it's staying in the revenue account will roll over. So if it's not something that happens immediately this fiscal year, it will be available.
Wonderful. Thank you. So money is still there. The money's not going anywhere. We are just not moving to the expenditure account until governing body has really made decisions on how to move forward with some of the recommendations for chart.
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Wonderful. I have some other questions about other items, but while we're on this topic, any questions or comments from members of the committee about this particular change? Okay, any questions or comments about the bar as a whole? You seem like you kind of don't know if you want to ask a question or not.
Thinking about it, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure. So with that change that Pauline indicated, we would be approving 414,230 for this bar.
Correct.
And then my other question was, at the governing body meeting, does this caption have to be updated for next week?
I believe that we received an email from Aaron saying that they are looking into that, but because it is not legislation, we are still within the time frame that they'd be able to do so.
Got it.
But yeah, they have that on their agenda.
Thank you.
I just had a couple other questions about some of the other items on here. I was trying to follow the memo with the commission discretionary funds, and I'm not sure I followed precisely what was happening. So they had 2 grants of $10,000 this past year, correct? But they couldn't decide what to do with it. So then was it spent, or is that part of the 50 that we're talking about here?
No, so Madam Chair, great question. Too much devils in the details, but it's too much. It made sense in my mind. Sorry. So the department allocated 10,000 in discretionary funds for the Arts Commission. It took them, it was really challenging for them to come together as a group. We had some new arts commissioners and we also had some vacancies. At that time, a few months later, we received as a department supplemental funding. And at that time, I requested for our Culture Connects Impact 15,000. So that would be 3 grants of 5,000 to support activities specifically on the south side of town. So we decided as a way to model how a process to disperse funds and to support community and cultural engagement, we leveraged the 10,000 from them for the Arts Commission, and then the 15,000 supplemental and the Arts Department, that was 25,000. And so we leveraged that to give out 5 grants, mini grants of 5,000 to support activities, 3 of which were on the south side. And so this year, knowing that they have a model, and we would run the procurement process for it, that I was suggesting that we double it. That is something that can be renegotiated in the bar and with this committee and governing body as well. And I'm also suggesting for the council district that we start with 10,000 discretionary funds to see how you and your co-counselor would want to support cultural investment and cultural engagement. That amount could be adjusted as well. And so I'm here to take input and make recommendations of where we can move numbers around if needed.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I think it would be helpful to hear, at least for me, about what was achieved with those 5 grants of $5,000 each. And can you tell me what those projects were?
Madam Chair, sure. The first one to highlight is Kevin Allende has an MC school. And so they actually did a large event at the Southside Library. They have a school that are teaching people how to DJ and other things. So he was able to do that as well as bring in other vendors to be there to help support that movement. So that was one way to support that our youth and also in the music format. So not just visual arts. Another one was Yvette Serrano and Hernan Gomez Chavez, who were finishing up their project La Carencia, which is storytelling. And so they were connecting stories from Española and for those in Southside, and they did event, I believe, I don't remember the name of the facility, but they did it like a potluck event there and shared the stories that they learned. And that's a continuation of their program. Then we had Sage Bird, who did 2 events, art activation events at the housing projects on the south side, and that was really successful. And they brought in music and art making and different artists. So that was a really great event. The Co-Center did a gardening type activation, and the dance. We had a pop-up dance at each of the parks, but not each, one park in each district. So those are examples of supporting our cultural community, our artists, and also bring extra benefit to the communities and the neighborhoods that they were focused in on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And so where it was an RFP put out, so the people came forward for proposals for the grants. And so that's kind of what you're hoping the commission will model that process as with their 50,000.
Madam Chair, that is correct. We did a request for proposals. We made it in bilingual. You could either do it online or a written application. And we try to make it as easy and accessible as possible. Plus, these had to be initiated rather quickly in the span of 3 months. Okay. So we're hoping to have more time. The arts commissioners may decide to do something else. That's really up to them, and as well as modeling for what each council district would like to do and support themselves.
Okay, wonderful. And so there's $10,000 per council district. Do you guys have a model for following up? Sometimes we get money allocated to us and then we forget we have money allocated to us. Are you guys going to be reaching out to each council pair to start this discussion soon?
Madam Chair, absolutely. Because if this money is not spent, then we are doing a disservice to the communities, right? So it's in my budget for this fiscal year.
Wonderful.
So when we are approved, because I'm thinking positively, on Thursday, I will send out an email notifying each council district pair that this is an opportunity, and then work with you on, you come up with the ideas and what you want to do, and we will figure out the procurement process.
Okay.
And how to carry that out.
All right. And if a council district wanted to do some community engagement around the spending of these funds, is that something that you all would be able to support us, or would we want to be working with the community engagement department?
Madam Chair, that's a great question, and probably it could be a combination of both. And what we may want to look at is using some of those funds to hire community members to actually lead the community engagement, because they're already in the communities versus my staff or community engagement department staff. So there's different ways around how to do that.
Okay, so the funding is flexible enough that if we needed to use a little bit to really get that community feedback, that's there.
Madam
Or we also do have our council funding that's for community engagement as well. So we have some funding options there.
Right, Madam Chair, it sounds great. If you can leverage those funds together, then that just amplifies what you're able to do.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I was really excited to see these dollars district by district, because that's something you and I have discussed a few times about how do we bring more of these programs throughout the city. So thank you for putting this in there and being willing to take on the task of working with 4 pairs of us to, that'll probably be slightly different processes in each district. So I know that'll be some extra work for you. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
I don't have any further questions. Any other questions, comments from members of the committee? And if not, what are the wishes of the committee? Oh, do we have to move this as amended or does anybody know? What does the bar say?
It would have to be as amended because the
Captions.
agenda and the captions have the full amount.
Okay, so when making a motion, it would be as amended.
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Can I please get a roll call?
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Cassett,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pauline. Okay, moving on to matters from staff. Any matters from staff today?
Madam Chair, I have no matters from staff from CDD.
Nor do I, Madam Chair. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Any matters from members of the committee? And I have no matters from the chair. Our next meeting is not until Wednesday, December 7th, 2022. And with that, at 5:47, we are adjourned. Rich, you have plenty of time.